All right, welcome back to the third lecture of this course. We are today going to see some ways the errors can come in machine arithmetic. We have seen some ways to study the machine arithmetic. The machine arithmetic uses only finitely many digits, and there are two ways basically to do that. There is one method called the chopping method, and the other method which is called the rounding method. So both these methods do introduce some errors, and we will see some major sources of those errors and also try to see some ways how we could reduce or try to reduce those errors. So let me just quickly recall how the machine arithmetic is defined. So when you are adding two numbers, what the machine will do is that it will take the number x, take its floating point representation, which is the k digit approximation, add the floating point representation of y to that, and whatever result you get, it will further take its floating point representation, the further k digit approximation. Similarly, we would do for x minus y and as well as for the product and the division. So what it does is that it will take the two numbers x and y, apply the floating point representations, perform the arithmetic, and then finally take the floating point representation of the result also. Okay, so one of the major ways an error can creep in during these calculations is when we have to cancel two numbers which are nearly equal. So for instance, if you write the floating point arithmetic for x using these k digits and the floating point arithmetic for the floating point representation for y, the k digit approximations that we have here for x and y, if we write them using these k digits and suppose that there are the first p digits are the same. Okay, this is what we will say that the numbers are nearly equal. And then alpha p plus 1 and beta p plus 1, these are distinct. That's the first instance when the numbers are distinct. Okay, and then we start writing them as alphas and betas. The same digits, they are d1, d2, dp. And after that, the next two digits, so alpha p plus 1 and beta p plus 1, they are distinct. After that, we don't care. Perhaps you will again have equal numbers, but at least this is the first place where these numbers are distinct. And now if we have to take the x o minus y, o minus is that minus sign circle um, sign. So that's the o minus, which is the machine subtraction. So when you compute that, it's going to be gamma p plus 1, gamma p plus 2 up to gamma k, because for x and y, we have only the information up to alpha k and beta k. So we will not have any digits after gamma k. And this gamma p plus 1 up to gamma p plus 2 gamma k, these are obtained by subtracting the um, floating point representation of x, the floating point representation of y from the floating point representation of x. And because you are losing out on these p digits, you will have n minus p in the power of 10. So this is what we get. So what this has resulted in, that is has reduced the number of digits of significance. The number of digits of significance for FLX and FLY was k, but now we have only k minus p digits of significance. Okay, and further, if you have any other calculation that you would want to do with x o minus y, it will not have any more than k minus p significant digits. It's not going to suddenly increase the number of significant digits. So once you have performed an operation, then the errors are likely to get worse. So when you cancel two nearly equal numbers, there is a possibility that the errors may creep in. And let's see an example. So suppose we take x equal to 1/3 and y equal to 0.3333. Okay, and into 10 raised to 0, because that's the number we will look at. Then also assume that we are going to use 5-digit arithmetic. So in the 5-digit arithmetic, the floating point representation for x will be 0.33333, whereas for y, it's going to be 0.33330. So I have not introduced any more complication here. I have just taken y to be the 4-digit arithmetic representation of x, and when you go 1 digit higher, there is an error that we will see. Okay, so now if I compute x o minus y, there is going to be that last 3 which is there for x, that will stay. So this 3 will stay, and what then we get is 0.3 into 10 power minus 4. This is the machine subtraction of x and y. Okay, so x minus o minus y is 0.3 into 10 power minus 4. The absolute error here, if you compute, it's 0.00001 by 3. You can compute the absolute error by, writing it as x equal to 1/3, y equal to this, and perform the arithmetic, and then you will have a 3 in the denominator. And that's the way you would compute the absolute error instead of writing the decimal expansion. And the relative error here is 1 by 10. That's a reasonably large relative error. Meaning when you are computing something and there is an error of 1 in 10, that's considered as a big error. So a very simple calculation that we have done here gives us an error and where the relative error is quite big. Let's see another such example. Suppose you want to compute the value of this function 1 minus cos x. Now we know that if x is 0, then cos x is 1, and so f of 0 is 0. That is something we know. So and cos is of course the continuous function. So if you take x reasonably close to 0, then cos x is reasonably close to 1. Okay, so if we take this x, which is 1.2 into 10 power minus 5, so that's a very small number, very close to 0, then cos x is 0.999999999. The next digit will be 2, but let's ignore that. Let's take the first 10 significant digits, the 10 significant digits that we have taken. So rounded to 10 digits. It's a rounding because the next digit is 2. So it doesn't increase the cos value. And therefore 1 minus cos x will give you 0.00000000001. Okay, so this is the 1 minus cos x. Whereas, so what we have done here is that we started for cos x with 10 significant digits, but the difference has given us a single significant digit. There is only one significant digit for 1 minus cos x, and the number is not 0 because x is not 0. So 1 minus cos x is not 0. So you should get a small number, but the small number has only one significant digit, whereas you had started with 10 significant digits. Again, the relative error is very big. In fact, if you compute here the relative error, it's more than 1. So this is what happens when you are going to cancel two nearly equal numbers. And then, of course, the limitation that we have put using the k-digit arithmetic does result in this kind of an error. Another way the error will creep in is when we divide by numbers of small magnitude or multiply by numbers of large magnitude. So that's again another way the errors can come. So suppose, let's do this theoretically. Suppose I have a real number a and its floating point representation is a plus epsilon. There is an error of some epsilon. Okay. Now, if we divide a by this 10 power minus n, then the machine arithmetic a o divided by b will be floating point representation of the fraction floating point representation of a upon floating point representation of b. Floating point representation for a is a plus epsilon, and then you are dividing it by 10 power minus n, so it becomes a plus epsilon into 10 power n. And now this is its floating point representation because you have not made any change. The earlier epsilon that remains, only the power of 10 is going to change. Okay. So now if we compute the absolute error in this, earlier it would have been a into 10 power n, but now the machine arithmetic has given it to be a plus epsilon into 10 power n. So the absolute error is mod epsilon into 10 power n, which is very huge. So just by dividing by this very small number, we have made this absolute error many-fold. We have increased the absolute error in its magnitude. We have multiplied the absolute error by that big number. That has what has happened. So these are two ways the errors will creep in, and there could be something which will happen simultaneously. So these both things can happen at one place. For instance, when we are looking at this quadratic equation, ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0, and we know that the roots are given by that quadratic formula, minus b plus or minus b square minus 4ac upon 2a. These are the two formulae for the two roots. And here, if your b square is very large compared to 4ac, then the machine is likely to treat 4ac as 0. And then root of b square will be b. And if you have a minus b outside and then plus this b, then that's going to give you 0. So this is one way that errors can creep in, and actually we saw an example of such a thing in our very first lecture. But there is one thing that I should tell you right away. So this is something I tell all my calculus students. In fact, some of your TAs are among those students who have done calculus course with me, and this is something that I tell them, that square root is not a function. So let's take a moment to understand what we really mean by all this. So mathematically, when we write things, there is a certain meaning for that. For instance, we wrote a equal to 1/3 in one of our earlier calculations, or x equal to 1/3. So what is the meaning of 1, that horizontal line, and 3? The meaning of that is that by this symbol, 1 dash 3, 1 upon 3, by this symbol, we denote a real number which when multiplied by 3 gives you 1. That's the meaning of it. And so when you write square root of some quantity, we would mean by that symbol to be that particular real number whose square is that quantity which you are putting under the square root sign. So if you were looking at square root of 4, then it should give us that number whose square is 4. All right. So it could mean that you are looking at 2, or it could also mean that you are looking at minus 2. And therefore, this is the reason that square root is not a function. It will either give you 2 or minus 2. But when we are using this solution, when we are using this symbol square root for our solution of the quadratic equation, we decide once and for all that our square root of a real number will be the positive square root. And then the discrepancy is taken care by the symbols that we have. So outside the square root, you see that there is a positive symbol and then there is a negative symbol. So these two symbols take care of the fact that there are two square roots, but you fix a convention for square root saying that whenever you are taking square root of a positive real number, the square root is taken to be the positive square root. Okay, that's the convention that we have. And now we come back to our discussion of errors. So if I have a b which is positive, then I have a minus b in the formula, in the numerator of the formula. And if b is large enough, this square root is also going to give me just the symbol b. So I have a minus b plus b, and that's what is going to give me the error to be 0. So we can actually get around this error, we can get around this problem by rationalizing the formula. We have this formula minus b plus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. You multiply the denominator and numerator by the same quantity which is non-zero. Remember, these are non-zero numbers. Our a and c are non-zero. So that is something that we are assuming. Of course, if you are looking at a quadratic equation, x square term should have a non-zero coefficient. So a is non-zero. Let's also assume that c is non-zero. So that we are multiplying and dividing by the same non-zero number, and it gives you this alternate formula. Let's see this carefully. The numerator of the product will have a quantity plus another quantity and the same quantity minus another quantity. So the product of these two will be the square of the first quantity minus the square of the second quantity. Square of the first quantity is b square. Square of the second quantity is b square minus 4ac. So the difference will give you 4ac. The numerator of the product is 4ac. You have 2a in the denominator, so you are left with 2c in the numerator. So you have 2c upon the denominator of that rationalizing factor that you have multiplied by. And that minus sign could be put above for 2c, and so therefore we get minus 2c upon b plus square root b square minus 4ac. Now the problem was that when your b was positive, the earlier formula would give you negative of that b plus the same b, because b is very large compared to 4ac, and so it would give you 0. What we have done now is that this b is still positive, plus you have a square root of b square minus 4ac, which is likely to give you b, but it is now not going to cancel, it's going to add, and so that one error that could have come has now been avoided. So this is the alternate formula. You may try to do the earlier equation that we have done in our first lecture using this alternate formula and see whether you get a different answer. Similarly, for the other root, you would have minus b minus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. That would be the formula. There, if your b is negative, then minus b becomes positive, and minus of that positive square root would get cancelled. So if b is negative, now this new formula gives you that the denominator is not going to cancel, but it's going to add those two negative numbers. And so this is the other formula that we have. So these are the formula. However, you should not use the other formula when things are good. If your b is positive and you use the second formula, then you are going to cancel the things in the denominator. So your denominator, first of all, there is an error because you are going to cancel nearly equal numbers, and then you are going to divide by a very small number. So the errors will become even larger. So you have to be very careful while using these alternate formulae. And the reason is that the sign of b should determine the formula that we should use. Okay, if b is too big compared to the product 4ac, then the alternate formula will result in big error, as we will be dividing by a very small number, which is the difference of two nearly equal numbers. Okay, so just to summarize, the cancellation error can come in two major ways. When you cancel two nearly equal numbers, that is one way the error can creep in, and second is when you subtract a small number from a big number, so which can happen when you are looking at the quadratic formula, the solution of the quadratic equation. That's where this another cancellation error does come in. And this is one very important point, that the errors propagate. When you are making an error and you apply further operations, the errors are not going to get small, they are not going to vanish. The errors will increase, the entropy increases. That's the principle that we are quite familiar with. So once an error is introduced in a calculation, any further operation is going to exaggerate the error. You will at least have the same error, or perhaps you will have a higher error. And this will happen when you do even some small computation. If you have a function and you want to compute the value of the function at some point, then you are likely to have many calculations. And so the errors are going to compound. So even for polynomial functions, for instance, if you want to compute this very simple polynomial function, x cube plus x square plus x plus 1, and suppose we are doing it at the point x equal to 1.876 using 2-digit arithmetic. So you see already that when you are using 2-digit arithmetic, the chopping method will take your x to be 1.87. You simply chop, that's 6. And the rounding method will take 1.88. So already there is a difference between these two, and so you are going to have some errors. So if we want to compute this particular value, I have done the computation, and so this is how the computation looks like. The first row gives you the exact computation. So your x is 1.876, its square is 3.519376, and its cube is 6.602349,376. Then the value of the function, which is the sum of all these three numbers plus 1, is 12.997725,376. So that's the final value of the function. Whereas if we were using two-digit chopping method, okay, it's the machine arithmetic. So how would the square, first of all, x will be taken as 1.87. How will the square be taken? Square will be 1.87 into 1.87, and then you apply the two-digit chopping. So that gives you 3.49. There is already an error at the square level. Okay. The cube will be obtained by taking this floating point arithmetic representation for square and you multiply it by x. So we will have 1.87 into 3.49. It's not that you take the cube of the original number and then apply the two-digit chopping. That's not how the machine will understand it. Machine will store the number using the chopping method. So you have already stored x as 1.87. Its square is computed as a two-digit number, which is 3.49. So the cube will be the product of these two, 1.87 into 3.49. And then once you compute the result, you apply the two-digit chopping, which is 6.52. And then the sum of these three numbers, add 1 to that, will give you 12.88. So we see that the original value of the function is 12.9977 something. That, because of the two-digit chopping arithmetic, has resulted in 12.88. A similar calculation with two-digit rounding will tell you that it has now become 13.05. So it is quite understandable that the chopping method will give you the result to be smaller one, and the rounding method will give you a result which is bigger than the actual answer. So someone might say that we apply both this, we apply the chopping, we apply the rounding and take the average. That is something that you might want to come up with. But all these ad hoc methods, all these ad hoc tricks will be applicable only to some particular cases. For instance, even here, if you are going to take the average, you will see that it's still not equal to the correct number. The chopping method is much smaller than the actual value. It's smaller than the actual value by 0.1177. So it's actually by 0.12 really seen. Whereas the rounding method has gone slightly above. It is only 0.06 or maybe even 0.05. That's the way the error has gone. So even if you were to take the average of these two values, the two-digit chopping and two-digit rounding, you are still not going to get the actual number. You will still have an error. That's what I'm trying to say. So here we have not used any of those error-prone operations. We did not do the division by smaller numbers, or we did not apply the cancellation of numbers which are nearly equal. Even then, only the thing that we have done is that we have used the machine arithmetic that has introduced this error. So even this simple finite digit arithmetic has produced an error, and therefore you can imagine what would happen when you actually apply the error-prone operations. So those are the ones that we have to be really careful about. Now, finally, can we avoid errors? So is it possible to avoid errors? We have seen that you can try to use other methods. So for instance, for quadratic formulae, we told you that instead of using the well-known formula, you can rationalize the formula and use it where you don't happen to cancel the nearly equal numbers. So those are some ways that we can try to do. But this is something, and the last example should tell you that whenever you are using finite arithmetic, whenever you are using machine arithmetic, the errors are inevitable. So that is something that we should accept. We can try to reduce them. There are some measures which we can take to try and avoid errors or at least to minimize them. But these measures will depend very much on the cases that you are studying. So they will vary as the cases vary. For instance, for the quadratic equations, the formula can be written down in a different way and the error can be minimized. That is something that we have seen. And for the polynomial operation that we have done just now, that can also be improved because a degree 3 polynomial, for instance, can be written in this nested form. This is called a nested polynomial. And if you do the computation in this way, then the errors will be actually smaller because the number of operations has reduced. Let's count the number of operations. So the arithmetic operations that we have here are additions and multiplications. How many multiplications do we have if we just look at the left hand side formula? Okay, so you will start with your x and you will multiply by c to compute cx. That is the first product you are going to take. You will also compute x square. That is the second operation, second multiplication. Then you will have to take, once you have x square, you can multiply by b to compute bx square, and you can multiply by x to compute x cube. And once you have computed x cube, you will multiply to x cube by a. Okay, so cx, x square, bx square, x cube, and ax cube. There are 5 multiplications and 3 additions. You have ax cube plus bx square, then to that you will add cx, and to that you will add d. 5 products, 5 multiplications, and 3 additions. Now if you come to the right hand side of the formula, you started with x, you multiplied by a to get ax, that is multiplication number 1, then you add b, so addition number 1. To this result, you multiply by x, so multiplication number 2, and then you add c, that is addition number 2. And finally, you multiply by x, that is multiplication number 3, and you add d. So there are 3 additions. The number of additions that you have, that is not going to change, but the number of multiplications has reduced from 5 to 3. If you have a higher degree polynomial, then this number is going to be even smaller. So by using this nested form of polynomials, that's a clever trick, that you can write down the same polynomial in a different form using smaller number of operations. This is the trick that computer scientists like to use. This is the kind of tricks that they like to use, but that does reduce the number of operations that we have. In fact, whenever you have to compute some very large numbers, what you can do immediately is that you compute x, then you compute x square, then you compute square of x square, then you compute square of that square, and so on. So you have x, x square, x to the 4, x to the 8, x to the 16. These are ready with you. And finally, you have to just multiply some of these to get the final answer. Okay, so these are the ways you can try and avoid errors, but errors are inevitable. You may try at best to minimize them. Okay, so with this, we come to the end of our first theme of our course. The first theme is machine arithmetic. What we have seen is how a machine will store numbers, and instead of doing the usual binary thing, we have tried to see it using the decimal expansion, using the k-digit decimal expansion, and that has told us how the errors do come in. We have also tried to see how we can try and minimize the errors, and the best thing to do is that we have to think before we do these computations. So that is the theme number 1, and from our next lecture we will start our second theme, which is the equations in one variable. You would soon be given the tutorial problem sheet, and the tutorial problems for our first tutorial will depend on this first theme, machine arithmetic, and then from the next tutorial onwards we will have problems which will depend on the second theme, and so on. So long for this lecture, and I hope to see you next time.